Hey y'all, what's up? It's Mike Belly. Today we are going to be doing something special, something that usually you probably haven't seen in your life, something that's a little different. We are going to be ranking movie series. So, to classify what is included in these movie series, I went through and thought of and also looked at. I looked through many different sites. The highest, most ranked movie series. Now, to classify as this, it has to be three movies or more. It has to be popular, extremely popular. Whether it's good or bad, it also has to be somewhat relevant, right? So there are two series that I am not going to talk about because I don't have any experience in or like what I have seen. I have not seen really much of Alien or the Mad Max series. Regardless of that, I have a not sure category, so if I see any of these and I really can't comment on it, I will move it to the not sure category, and unfortunately for y'all, I am not quite sure. Everything else I've mostly seen, but just because I haven't seen a few other movie series, I've seen almost everything else that's here. So I do have a pretty large opinion on mostly all of this. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's get started here. And before we start, I do have to say that this is in consideration of every movie or show included in these series, meaning that any bad movies or awful shows will take down the total score of that series. So we'll talk about that a little later. All right, so to start off, we're going to go and we're going to find stuff that honestly is just awful. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the Jason Bourne series. This is going to go in D tier. I think there's one of these movies that are actually great. They just kind of repeat themselves, and they're all just not that great. I'm not a big fan of them. There's not a lot of talk about them. I just don't think they ever have great, story. Chucky is going to be going in D tier. I've seen all of them. Obviously, I don't think there's ever been a movie like in the top 200 that of Chucky that's even been that great. They're not scary. They're really corny. They're kind of cringe. Just not that good. Next up, we're going to be putting Twilight in D tier. I think this is one of the cringiest, most corny series I've ever seen in my life. I don't think it's that great coming from a personal aspect of film. Like, it was pretty awful too. Like, I mean, I remember seeing scenes that were not only cringe but just didn't make sense. I know the books were great, and I know it's more of a romance thing, which I'm not really into, and that's why there's not really anything on here romance related. So we're gonna put that in D tier. Scream movies, we're gonna put it in D as well. Again, and this is what you're gonna see with these series that have like 12 movies. It doesn't matter if two or three of the movies are good. The rest of them suck. Like, that's why, for example, Resident Evil is gonna make its way to D tier. There's like two movies that are good. The rest are just like, oh my god, like please just end the series. Um, Another example of that is gonna be Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious is gonna move its way into C just because there were about like 4 or 5 movies that were great. The problem is they kept making them, right? And that's again another problem with that. But this one had quite a few movies that were good, and that's why it is going to make its way into C tier. We are then going to talk about the Saw movies, which are probably going to go into D. I'd say there are about two movies that are great. I'm not a big fan of the ones that are just, it's so repetitive. The villain keeps returning. Again, that's why we're going to see Halloween go in here. There are great movies, there are awful movies, and there are extremely awful movies, and Halloween has all of the above. Um, Friday the 13th is going to make its way into D tier. I was almost going to put this in the not sure list, but I don't really think I have to. Compared to all these other movie series, we don't really have to talk about it that much. And that's what you're going to see with all these horror movies is these are all series that they kept releasing movies. And again, that is a problem because we're talking about the overall rating of each movie, and most of the time it sucks, and that's why it brings it down. So that is why we're going to put this in D tier. Um, Next, I'm trying to find anything else that I have to put down here. I'd say The Purge is probably going to go in D tier as well. There's like one good movie. The other ones kind of suck. Again, kept releasing them. So Nightmare on Elm Street is going to make its way to C tier. I thought that these movies were a little bit better. Not horrible. I thought it's kind of a good series. I think it can make its way to C tier. It's on the line, but it's there. Star Trek is going to be in D tier. I think Star Trek is personally an awful series, and you'd understand because of the amount of shows and movies they have that are just so bad. It's just like they have a lot of they have a few series that are like pretty good, but the rest just kind of suck. So then, Paranormal Activity is also going to make its way into D tier. I have seen every single one of those, and I'll say they're pretty scary and freaky, but again, same concept, same thing, every movie, just not that interesting. Other than that, I think we could start moving our way up a bit. Oh, sorry, one last one. Final Destination's going into D tier. Don't have to speak about that one. Alrighty, next up, we're going to be putting Night at the Museum in C tier. This is at the higher end of C tier. I honestly don't think these movies are that bad. They're just not that great. And I think the first one's pretty good, pretty solid. I enjoyed it. Second one I wasn't really that into. And the third one was just not that good. So, next up, we're going to start. And by the way, as we go on, I'll explain a little more into some of the series that are coming up here, why they move their way up, and I'll give more detail into them. It's hard to talk about something when it's really bad. So, okay. We're going to put Cars in C tier. So we all know Cars 1 and 2 are great movies, but Cars 3 and 4 are pretty bad. As a child, I loved the movies. I thought they were great. They weren't horrible. I just don't think it's able to move up into B tier. And I think that's something that I'm going to include Shrek in as well, because I thought Shrek, honestly, like, great movies, but again, it's just there's so much stuff that ends up being released that's just not that good. We're going to go ahead and put Despicable Me. We're going to put Despicable Me in C tier also. Again, the first movie was great, but along with all the Minion stuff, they just keep releasing movies that are just, I don't know, not that interesting. You know, not that great. Spy Kids is also going to make its way to C tier. Honestly, not a bad series as a kid. You will never, absolutely never have me sit down, though, and watch this series ever again. That's why it's going to make its way into C tier, just because it was so peak at the time. We're also going to see Transformers make its way into C tier. I'd say half these movies could be considered B tier, but the problem is it's half. And as a series, it's not that bad. It's at the higher end of C tier. I just can't put it in B, and that's just kind of how it is. I'm trying to think of anything else that I would probably say. Home Alone. Home Alone's gonna make its way up into B tier, I think. Like, that's such like a, it's one of those things that's like a seasonal watch that's actually pretty good. I'd say like Home Alone 1 and 2 especially are really good, and it wasn't like one of those things where they dragged it. And you have to think this is the one with that actor as well, so we're not including the different actor that they had. So if you just include him, like, he had a great series and a great run. Jurassic World's also going to make its way into C tier. This is a series that could never replicate Jurassic Park and could never get up there. I enjoyed it, I liked it, but I wasn't that intrigued about it. So we're going to go ahead and put Toy Story in B tier because Toy Story, we all know Toy Story. Very good, not bad. I think Toy Story 1 and 2 especially are great. Toy Stories 3 and 4 are a bit worse. But overall, I'd say it's a B tier. Great series. Not much to talk about. We're going to go ahead and we're also going to throw one more. We're going to throw Planet of the Apes into B tier because there's not a lot to talk about here, but the first Planet of the Apes movie was amazing. And honestly, I liked the second movie. Like, I thought the first and second movies were like, I thought they were both great movies. Obviously, the third one ended up being pretty rough. Regardless, the fourth one sucked. I think the first two carry it a lot, and I liked the whole apocalyptic situation that they kind of displayed in it, and I thought that was really good. Like, I think it could be considered B tier. Men in Black is going to go ahead and make its way to B tier. honestly, great series. Don't really have a problem with much of it. I thought it was all pretty nice, pretty great. Um, Not much to say. It's been quite a bit since I've seen them. But obviously, Will Smith, you know, good actor. I like it a lot. It was pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and put Rocky in B tier as well. Rocky is one of those things that's like so nostalgic, and the movies were just like, famous quote, famous lines. I don't think it was like ever anything astronomical, but I never had a problem with the movies because I thought they were always pretty interesting. Um, and that also brings up one that I forgot to put in here. I forgot to put Karate Kid in here. I'll put that as an honorable mention. I think that would move itself into C tier. Unfortunately, I did not put the picture in here, but that is where we are going to rank it. We're also going to go ahead and put Terminator in B tier because honestly, Terminator to me was still a great series, and I liked the way they connected it through time, and I thought it was not bad. I thought it was pretty good, So we're gonna go ahead and put it that right there. I did forget about Mission Impossible, and that's gonna go in C tier. I think Mission Impossible was way better than the Jason Bourne series, and that's why it's going into C tier. I kind of liked the whole breaking into the bank style, and we'll talk about something else that's like that as well in here in a second. But that is why it is going there. So one more probably for B tier is going to be the Hunger Games. Pretty great series. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it really rounds up towards the end, and obviously this is a books before the movies, so it's hard to replicate the books, and that's why it wasn't as great as the books. But I think it's a great series personally. I would watch it again. Again, a little bit of corny love in there, but great overall. And the Maze Runner is also going to go into B tier. I've seen all those as well. Honestly, great ending, great story. I love the character development in both of those as well. Very similar style, kind of, in a way. But yeah. And so I think we are to the point where everything else here is going to be going A tier to perfect. Yeah, pretty much. Actually, one more B tier is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean. I think there's an extent to where if they didn't make the most recent movie, it would be an A tier, but they made the most recent movie, and that's why it moves down to B tier. So, actually, I don't know. Okay, we have to put two more. We have to put two more here. We have to put X-Men here. Problem with X-Men is it's so hard to keep up with everything. And I did one time, I went through and I watched all of them. Up through the most recent one. And it's great. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of awful. If you wanted to and even include some of the shows, not great, right? And I think there was one more that I wanted to add in here. Or is that everything? Yeah, we're going to go throw John Wick in here as well. John Wick, great action-packed. I love John Wick. I love the action. I was thinking about putting it in A tier. Unfortunately, I'm not going to move it there. But I think the movies are honestly well-paced. I like the way that they kind of get to the end where he gets his revenge. I just think it gets a little repetitive as they go on, and he just keeps killing people, and I think that's why it's not as great towards the end. Okay, A tier. Cloverfield Paradox making its way into A tier. Now, this is a sleeper pick, and I'm going to tell you for one reason. I'm very into the apocalyptic situations and that style of movie. This 3 series, they're all different movies, all very fascinating and interesting movies. I would go, for sure, if you haven't, please go watch all 3. I enjoyed them a lot. I think it's a great series. I think it makes its way into A tier without a doubt. I like the bunker one especially. The one in space I'm not as into, and yeah, I thought it was pretty great. Back to the Future is also making its way to A tier. It's too thing about Back to the Future, it's so original that you can't really beat it much. It's gonna make its way into A tier no matter what. I enjoyed the movies a lot. I thought all three of them were pretty solid. I think it makes its way in A tier without doubt. So then we're gonna put The Hobbit in A tier. It's hard to beat one of the best series of all time, and that's why I think people overestimate it, and they like to say that it was bad just because it wasn't as good as Lord of the Rings, which you can't top Lord of the Rings, especially when it's that same world. Like, I thought it was not bad. I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. The battles are awesome. The whole adventure and everything about it is just great, and that's why it's going to go in A tier here. Next up, we have the Conjuring series, an absolute frightening series. I've seen all of the movies, Annabelle, etc. They're all really good. There's really not a question that it's probably the scariest in the business. I also kind of forgot about Insidious. I think I definitely could have included Insidious in this series, but it beats Insidious 100% because Insidious is so repetitive. The Conjuring has the different stories of the different types of, spirits that they face and all of that. So I think that's why it makes its way into A tier, because it's very scary, great films, overall a great series. Next up here, we have The Hangover. Amazing. Obviously one of the best comedy series of all time. Very enjoyable to watch. Hilarious. It's making its way into A tier without a doubt. I'm not turning back. Next up, we have Indiana Jones. This is going to make its way into A tier because I think as a kid, I really liked and enjoyed these movies. The fourth one wasn't as good, but the whole, I don't know. Currently on my channel, I am playing the Lego Indiana Jones game. It's so nostalgic, though. It's really good. The story is amazing. The adventure is amazing. It's there. It's very enjoyable to watch. It makes its way there. Okay. Jurassic Park is also going to make its way here in the A tier. Not a lot to say. The original 3 Jurassic Park movies are really good. They kind of brought something into light in film that was really interesting, and that I enjoyed personally. So I think that definitely could go in here. This also reminds me of the Godzilla series, and I keep doing this because I try and make sure I include every series here. I would put the Godzilla series in the C tier. The first movie's great. The rest of them just kind of get rough from there. So sorry, had a quick side note about that one. Then the 007 Daniel Craig movies are going to be going in the A tier. Not a lot to talk about. Casino Royale, one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that's why it really carries the weight here. The rest of the series is great. I think it kind of goes downhill in film, but again, a lot of great movies. I thought Skyfall was great. Spectre was great. Great music. Again, great action. Really great. Just really great all around. So, looks like we have one more to put in A tier, and that is the Ocean's movies. I cannot tell you how interested and fascinated I was with these movies. For one reason only is that, I think it's so interesting how they break down each time, how they're breaking into these casinos and, banks and everything. I don't know. I like it a lot. I don't think that there's any... I don't think, really, the Mission Impossible movies come close to these. Honestly, I don't. I would say Now You See Me gets up there, but it's not a 3-movie series, so it can't really touch it. And yeah, it's going into A tier. Okay. So from here out, you can see we have 6 things here. Everyone obviously knew they were going to make it here. It's how it is. Okay. The Matrix is going to fall out because I've thought about this. Matrix is going to fall out into A tier because I just don't think it touches the other 5. Correct. The Matrix is great. I love The Matrix. I do. It's fascinating, so interesting. It even made people question their own life. I think The Matrix is great. I just think the second movie and the third movie had more promise after the first movie because of how good the first movie is. I think that's why it falls out of almost perfect contention, and that's why it's an A tier. So, we're going to talk about one of my favorites of all time, why it's not going to be in perfect. So, we're putting Star Wars in almost perfect. So, here's the problem with Star Wars. We obviously know that the problem with Star Wars is the most recent shit sucks. The newest series, movies 7, 8, and 9 sucked. A lot of the shows they've released recently suck. The problem and the thing is that it's so fucking good. Movies 1 through 6, Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, Rogue One. It's so good that it still carries the weight of all the shittiness that's after it. And that's why it still makes its way into almost perfect. But that is why it is not perfect. And don't get me wrong, I'm one of the biggest Star Wars fans out there. I really am. But it is not in the perfect tier. So, we're putting the Avengers in the almost perfect. And by Avengers, I am not talking about anything post-Endgame. Post-Endgame sucks. There's not a lot post-Endgame. This is the Avengers. We are talking Iron Man. We are talking the Thor movies, the Captain America movies, and the Avengers movies. This is not including Civil War either. I don't include that in this. This is up through Endgame. This is also including Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which was the first and the second Guardians of the Galaxy, which were great. It is almost perfect up through Endgame, and you can't disagree. Bringing Thanos in as a character, he nearly succeeds, basically does succeed. Kills off most of the main characters in the end, and a lot of movie series won't do it. They won't kill the main characters. They won't kill the good guys. I think it was near perfection through Endgame, and again, we're talking Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and that's it. Now, the problem with the MCU is obviously post-Avengers, post-Endgame, it sucks. And there are some shows and movies during the time that aren't that great. And the Hulk is extremely ass, and that is why the Hulk movie just kind of brings it down as well. But that is why it is in the almost perfect. I'm a big MCU fan. Okay. And we're going to just put these here, and this is how it's going to be. Because I have to explain to you one thing. And this is why these three are in the perfect tier. The Lord of the Rings, I am not going to argue with anyone. I don't care if you're grown or if you're young. The Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest, is the greatest series of all time. There's nothing really out of these three that I think even touches them because they're that up there. Lord of the Rings was so peak. It's unbelievable. The Hobbit was great, and it didn't even touch it. Like, the Lord of the Rings, the thing about the Lord of the Rings that people don't understand is the original style of that adventure when it came out was unseen, unheard of. The whole story is great. The concept's great. The characters are great. It is amazing. We'll talk with Harry Potter now. Harry Potter, and the reason it's above Star Wars is the build-up of the characters and how it ends is so emotional, and you just feel so connected to it. You know, seeing Dumbledore die, seeing Harry go through what he has to go through, it's a great series. And it's barely touched because I think the first and third movies aren't that great. But the problem is the rest is so good. The concept is so good. You want to go fucking buy a wand and wave it around at Universal. You're a big fan of it after you watch it. It's so good. And that is why it moves its way into the perfect tier. Now I have to talk about The Dark Knight. And I don't have to say a lot here because anyone that disagrees that this isn't a top movie series, I don't give a fuck. No one will ever play a better Joker role. No one will ever play a better Batman role. The soundtrack is fucking phenomenal for all three movies. Nothing will ever beat that as well. The stunts are amazing. The action is amazing. The scenery is amazing. It is so good. It is so peak. The story is awesome. It's just very hard to beat. And the third movie isn't as great as the first two, but the middle movie is always the best. The second movie is always the best, almost always. You see that in Lord of the Rings, pretty much. Whenever it's a 3-movie series, it's always the best. And so, yeah, I mean, these are my rankings. I guess go ahead. I can move this down for a second so you guys can see it better. If you don't agree with me or if you disagree with me, leave a comment down below. Let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what's wrong with it. I think these are near perfect rankings. I don't really think there's any question with any of these. And yeah, I think that's going to be it for the video today. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like down below, subscribe. The last ranking video did really well. I appreciate that. I hope to see you all in my streams as well. I stream pretty much once pretty much every day or two, so it just depends. Just keep an eye out. And I've been making a lot of ranking videos as well recently. So yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.